It's 2 in the afternoon, the highway is empty, and somewhere off Interstate 10 in the Arizona desert, a trucker just pulled into a rest stop and killed the engine. Outside, 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside that cab, in the next 15 minutes, it will get worse. A parked semi-cab sitting in direct sun doesn't stabilize at outside temperature, it exceeds it. The metal roof absorbs radiation, the glass traps it, and without airflow, the heat has nowhere to go but in. 15 minutes, that's all it takes for the interior to cross into dangerous territory. Now here's the part nobody thinks about. That trucker has to sleep in there. Federal law requires a mandatory 10-hour rest period before a driver can legally take the wheel again. They can't check into a hotel. They can't drive somewhere cooler. This is the job. This is the cab. This is where they rest. So how does that actually work? Before we get to the solutions, you need to understand why heat in a truck cab is a different kind of problem than cold. With cold, your body tells you immediately. You shiver. You pull the blanket tighter. Something in your brain says move, get warm, do something. The signal is loud. Heat doesn't work that way. Heat agotamiento, heat exhaustion, arrives quietly. First you feel sluggish, then heavy, then confused. And by the time your body triggers a real alarm, it's already been in trouble for a while. A driver who falls asleep in a cab sitting at 110 degrees Fahrenheit interior temperature isn't going to wake up feeling rested. They might not wake up feeling okay at all. And it's not just the air temperature, it's 3 things working together that make it brutal. The air temperature, the humidity, and the radiant heat coming off every metal surface inside that cab that's been baking in the sun for hours. You're not just breathing hot air, you're sitting inside a heat source. So how does the industry solve this? In layers. And the first layer starts with the truck itself. Modern long-haul cabs are built with insulation designed to work at both extremes. The same material that holds heat in during a Montana winter slows heat entry during an Arizona summer. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, all of it is rated. But here's where summer is harder than winter. The real enemy isn't the hot air outside. It's the sun hitting the metal roof. Direct solar radiation on a dark metal surface is essentially a heating element. Some manufacturers now build trucks with reflective roof panels, the same physics as an emergency thermal blanket, but integrated into the structure from the factory. It bounces the radiation before it ever becomes heat. The curtains and blinds inside the sleeper berth aren't comfort features. They're thermal barriers. A driver who pulls those shut before lying down can drop the interior temperature by several degrees with nothing more than that one move. But insulation alone doesn't solve the problem. You need active cooling. And here's where trucking gets expensive. Running the main diesel engine just to power the air conditioning burns between 3 and 5 liters of fuel per hour. Over a 10-hour rest, that's potentially 40 liters of diesel, just to sleep. That's not sustainable. And in many truck stops across the U.S., it's also not allowed. Idling bans exist in dozens of states to reduce emissions, so fleets across North America use a different solution: the auxiliary power unit. An APU is essentially a small, separate engine, much smaller than the main drivetrain that runs the climate system, the outlets, the lights, and the bunk heater or air conditioner while the main engine stays off. Fuel consumption drops from 3 to 5 liters per hour to roughly 1. It's still significant, but it's the difference between possible and not possible on a long-haul route. Then there's a third approach, one that's becoming more common in Europe, called thermal storage cooling. The concept is simpler than the name sounds. While the truck is moving and the engine is running at full power anyway, part of that energy is used to chill a special storage material inside the unit, the same way a battery stores electricity. Then when the truck parks and the engine shuts off, that stored cold releases slowly into the cab. No engine, no compressor, no noise. The catch is that it's finite. Depending on outside temperature, that stored cold lasts 8 to 10 hours, which lines up well with the mandatory rest period. But when it's gone, it's gone. You can't recharge it with the engine off. Each solution has a trade-off. Experienced fleets often combine them. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because the difference between a driver who survives a brutal summer on the road comfortably and one who dreads every rest stop isn't just equipment. It's habits. And these habits take years to build. Habit 1. Where you park. In winter, veterans look for windbreaks, walls, structures, anything to block the cold air. In summer, the priority flips completely. You never park in direct sun if you have an alternative. A cab that's been sitting in shade for 3 hours before the driver tries to sleep can be 10 to 15 degrees cooler at the start of the rest period than one that's been baking. 10 degrees. In those conditions, that's the difference between sleeping and lying there staring at the ceiling for 9 hours. Some experienced drivers map rest stops the way hikers map campsites, noting which ones have tree cover, which ones have east-facing spots that get shade by mid-afternoon, which truck stops have shaded slots that fill up fast and need to be claimed before a certain hour. Habit 2. Water. Specifically timed water. Not just staying hydrated throughout the day, though that matters, but drinking cold water in the 30 minutes before sleep. It drops core body temperature just enough to make sleep onset easier. The body starts sleep by cooling down, giving it a head start works. Many veteran drivers keep a 12-volt cooler plugged into the cab battery, not for food, for water. Always cold, available at any hour of the night. Habit 3. What you wear or don't wear. This sounds basic. It's not. New drivers make the mistake of sleeping in whatever they're wearing. Veterans have a specific sleep setup. Minimal clothing, lightweight cotton, nothing that traps body heat. The berth is warm enough without help. Some drivers use a technique borrowed from desert climates, a slightly damp cloth near the body as they sleep. As it evaporates, it pulls heat away. Low-tech, highly effective. Before we get to the close, there are 2 dangers that almost nobody outside the industry knows about, and both of them extend beyond the rest stop. The first is heat stroke. It's different from heat exhaustion, and it's far more serious. Heat exhaustion is the body struggling to cool itself. Heat stroke is the body giving up on that process entirely. Core temperature climbs without regulation. The signs, confusion, dry hot skin, loss of consciousness, don't always wake someone up. They can progress while a person is asleep. A driver in a cab that's climbed to 115 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature over a 4-hour rest doesn't necessarily feel it happening, and no one outside that cab knows either. The second is quieter, nocturnal dehydration. When it's hot, the body loses fluid through skin even during sleep. A driver who doesn't hydrate properly before lying down can wake up meaningfully dehydrated without having done anything more strenuous than trying to rest. Why does this matter beyond the cab? Because studies on driver impairment have drawn a direct comparison between driving dehydrated and driving with reduced sleep. Reaction times slow. Decision-making degrades. The kind of small judgment calls that happen constantly at highway speeds. A merge, a gap in traffic, a brake light ahead get harder. The heat that kept someone from sleeping properly at 3 a.m. in Tucson can be the invisible factor behind a completely different event on the highway 6 hours later. Here's the part that most people never know exists. Modern fleet trucks carry a sensor that continuously monitors interior cab temperature. And in many large operations, that data transmits in real time back to dispatch. If the temperature in a sleeper berth crosses a set threshold during a mandatory rest window, the system flags it. An alert goes out. It would be easy to assume that's about driver welfare. And maybe, for some companies, it is. But the operational reason is simpler and more honest. A driver who didn't rest properly is a liability in motion. An 80,000-pound vehicle driven by someone whose body spent the last 10 hours fighting 118 degrees Fahrenheit instead of recovering. That's a risk calculation the company has a direct interest in. The heat that made sleep impossible for one person in one parked truck in the desert is ultimately connected to every vehicle around that truck on the road the next morning. So the answer to how truckers survive 122 degrees Fahrenheit isn't one thing. It's insulation engineered to reflect radiation before it enters. It's auxiliary systems that cool without burning 40 liters of diesel overnight. It's years of learned habits around parking position, hydration timing, and sleeping light. And it's an awareness of something the cold never forces on you. That heat doesn't warn you before it becomes dangerous. It just gets worse, quietly, until it isn't quiet anymore. And like almost everything in the world of long-haul trucking, when you stop to actually look at it, there's a lot more happening than anyone passing a semi on the highway ever thinks about. If you made it this far, you already know this channel isn't about the obvious stuff. Every week we take something you pass every day. A truck on the highway, a piece of infrastructure, a system nobody explains, and we show you what's actually going on inside it. If that's the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. It's free, and you'll never look at a parked semi the same way again. There's a video right there that goes deeper into how truckers survive brutal winters. Same world, completely different set of problems. Watch that next. I'll see you in it.